Back in September of 2024, Huawei launched one of the most unique and incredible looking pieces of hardware that I think any of us have seen in quite a while. We were talking about the Huawei Mate XT Ultimate, and this is a tri-fold device, or as I would prefer to call it, a multi-folding device. This means it has not one hinge, but two hinges. It opens and closes in this sort of accordion fashion, both folding in and out, going from a 6.4-inch cover display all the way up to a 10.2-inch massive inner display. And because it has this in and out design, it can be opened up halfway, or I guess that would be a third of the way, as well as the full way. So you can have basically three different sized devices, which I think is very, very smart. Now, this device, when it launched, was prohibitively expensive. Okay, so 20,000 yuan, that's going to be about $3,600, and scalpers pushed it all the way up to around 50,000 or about $6,800. Okay, this thing was expensive and it got very expensive early on. It sold out. Scalpers bought a lot of them and they were price gouging the living daylights out of people. But even still, with that being the case, we have a recent post from a website called CNMO, which we will quickly pull up and translate. And they're pulling from this tipster on Weibo, and this is not translating because it is a screenshot. But basically, what they are saying is this device, even with that high price tag, managed to sell around 400,000 units since it launched in September. That's round about 7 months ago. Now, because 400,000 units in 7 months might not sound like a whole lot, and it might not mean much to you without context, I thought what I would do is I would give us some context. So I found this post from this tech tipster, which was being passed around as being accurate, so we're going to assume that it is accurate. They are saying that the Galaxy Z Fold 6 in its first 5 months sold about 2.09 million units. So 5 months to sell about 2 million, 7 months to sell about 400,000 for the Huawei Mate XT Ultimate. Now, you might hear that and you might think, wow, that's not all that impressive then for what Huawei did. The Z Fold 6, it's been talked about how it's not selling particularly well. The Fold 5, I think, actually sold a little bit better than that, and the Fold 4 sold a little bit better than that. So why are we sort of gassing these sales numbers up? Well, you have to think about this a little bit more, right? So they're not one-to-one devices. The first most obvious thing to think about is that this Huawei device is quite literally double the price of the Z Fold 6, and that is a big deal because we're not talking about one device is $200, the other one's $400. We're talking about one being $1,899 and one being the equivalent of about $3,600, almost $4,000 for this device. So selling 400,000 units of something that is that premium, that expensive, is extremely impressive. Now, don't get me wrong. The specs are fairly impressive here, right? This thing at its thinnest point is 3.6 millimeters. That is absolutely insane. It's got a 5,600 milliamp hour battery, charges at 66 watts. Of course, Harmony OS 2. We'll talk about that here in just a second. And then they have their own Kirin processor. Actually, both of those things kind of tie together to the fact that Huawei can't really do business with American companies, so they can't use a Qualcomm processor, so they have to use their own Kirin processors. They can't just straight up use Android with Google services, so they've customized things and they used Harmony OS in this case too. Now they're using Harmony OS Next, which is kind of its own thing. But the big thing to keep in mind that also will impact some of these sales is the fact that they can't really just straight out of the box use Google Play services. You can get them working, but that is going to be a barrier for some people. And you're also dealing with a novel form factor, right? How many people are going to want to spend $3,600 on a novel form factor, being an early adopter for something that's that expensive? It could be exciting, but it could also be scary, and it could definitely dissuade some consumers. So given all of the things that could and should hold these sales back, selling 400,000 units of a device that's $4,000 is absolutely impressive. And look, there's a reason Samsung is going to try to make their own. We've seen these rumors for a little while now. We have my little mock-up here based on some patents, and it seems like this is actually going to be pretty accurate. It could be that the cover display is on this other side. That might be the lone, like, big glaring mistake that I made here with my little mock-up. And it might be a little bit wider as well. The cover display there might be a little bit wider, but nonetheless, Samsung is working on their own multi-fold style device. The big difference between this and Huawei's is that rather than an in and out style folding device, this is an in and then also in a G Flex or G Fold style device is what you've seen from Samsung Display. That is rumored to be what they're doing here. What that's going to give you is a device where that somewhat more fragile folding screen is completely encased inside the device, necessitating a dedicated independent cover display for use in phone mode. Now, this device, like I said, has been rumored for a little while now. We've seen reports from Fandroid where they've not only confirmed that it does have the Q7M internal codename, but it also has the model number of SM F968. They've uncovered variants of that for South Korea and for the Chinese market exclusively. Now, this does not guarantee that this device will never launch in other regions, but I would guess it's probably going to be similar to the Z Fold Special Edition, which launched in those two regions. And then with the Z Fold 7, we're basically getting that special edition with some additional improvements. So this Samsung G Fold will likely launch South Korea and China. If it does well, maybe it will get a proper global launch the following year. Maybe a different name or something like that could happen as well. Probably a very similar path to that special edition. So Samsung, they're seeing what Huawei's doing. It's very impressive, and it actually is selling fairly well, given all the things that could hold it back. So Samsung's going to try to make their own version of something like this. Don't expect the hardware to be anywhere near this impressive. It's not going to be 3.6 millimeters. It's not going to have 66-watt charging, but hopefully that means it's also going to be a little bit cheaper. If you could get closer to the mid-2000s, I think you could actually sell a handful of these things, and it could be considered a success. But nonetheless, guys, I just want to get back to this Huawei Mate XT Ultimate. Very impressive what Huawei has managed to do with this device, selling as many as they have. From you guys, what I want is, how interested in a device like this would you actually be? Looking at Samsung's or maybe importing this one from China, some other regions where it has been available, limited regions, might I add. But would you be interested in a device like this? Which design do you prefer? The Huawei in-out version that gives you multiple different form factors, or Samsung's, which is really just going to be fully opened, or which I should say fully opened into an around 10-inch large inner display, or just using that cover display? Let me know in those comments down below. If you want to help support this channel in a more direct way, click that join button down below, and that will help make me a little bit less reliant on Google's ad revenue with its strange and hard to follow policies. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.